Today, Yomi is Nedarim Daf Chaf Beis Nedarim 22. We're going to start on Chaf Beis Amanal of 22a, 3 lines from the top, where the Gemara tells us, Bar Brase de Rabbi Yanai Saba Asla Kamei de Rabbi Yanai Saba, that Rabbi Yanai Saba's grandson, the son of his daughter, came to Rabbi Yanai Saba and Amar way, and he said to him, Ilu Abiyadat. So basically, he came to him to have his vow annulled. And Rabbi Yanai Saba opened up with what was called a Pesach. Pesach was, if you had known this, would you have made the vow? This is as opposed to a Charata. Charata is something where you regret that you made the vow in a moment of anger. So he came in front of Rabbi Yanai Saba. He said, Ilu Abiyadat, te paschen pinkasech u'mamashmashin b'ovdeich minadart. If you had known that when you make a vow in heaven, they open up your ledger and they start looking through all your deeds, would you have made the vow under those circumstances? So he said, well, he said, no, I never would have made it. Visharya. He said, okay, that's enough to annul your vow. That's called the Pesach, will annul your vow. Amar Rabbi Abba, my cross. Rabbi Abba says, what's the source for this idea that in heaven they look at your ledger after you make a vow? It's based upon the fact that the verse says, V'achar Nedarim levaker. After your vows, they'll investigate. And even though Rabbi Yanai used this as a Pesach, we don't use this as a Pesach. This to us is insufficient because the concept is, the reason why it's not a good Pesach is because the person will for sure not tell the truth, because who's going to lie and say, oh, even if I knew heaven would do this, I still would have made this vow. So who's going to make such a brazen claim? And so therefore we don't trust that the person would have to say that. So therefore we don't trust that he's really went to make the vow under those circumstances. We don't know that we could believe him. And also, we don't use a different Pesach that Rabbi Bar Bachana said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. And what did he say? He said, "My Pesach Rabbi Gamliel who Saba." How did Rabbi Gamliel? What was the Pesach that Rabbi Gamliel used to annul the vow of a certain elder? Yesh, he cited the verse from Proverbs. Yesh bote kimad karos charev v'shon chachamim marpeh. There's some speech that's piercing like a sword, but the language of the chachamim heals. This means whoever speaks with vows, basically, you should pierce him with a sword. But the language of the sages heals. The sages' language, they annul vows. Anyway, we don't use this to annul a vow, even though Rabbi Yochanan did it, because the reason why we don't use this is the Ran says, because since he said that he's committed a sin, once he knows that he's committed such a sin, that by making this vow, he's going to be so embarrassed that he's going to say he regrets it, even though he might not have regretted it. So back to the text of the Gemara. We don't use the other Pesach that we learned about in the price. At the Tanya, Rabbi Nassan Omer, I know there, somebody who makes a vow, it's like you built a bama. Bama are altars outside of the temple, which were permitted in the time before the temple was built, in the time before the Mishkan was built, and then after the Mishkan was destroyed and before the temple. But once the temple was built, they became prohibited. So we say somebody who makes a vow, it's like somebody who builds one of these bamas, and somebody upholds a vow, somebody upholds a vow is like he makes an offering on that bama. Now this is problematic because what has he done wrong? By upholding the vow, he's kept the vow. I understand why somebody who makes a vow, it's like building a bama, because those are both, you think you know the religion better. God says bring a sacrifice in the temple. You're building an altar outside the temple. God says this is permitted. You make a vow that it's prohibited. It's the same concept. But one who upholds a vow, he's doing what he's supposed to do. Whereas one who makes a sacrifice outside the temple is chayav kares. But anyway, that's the example that the Talmud gives. And the reason is because it's going to encourage this person to commit these sins ongoing in the future. So we learned about this brisa that Bereisha Paslinan, that the first cause, one who build, if you are known that you're building an altar, that making a vow is like building a bama, would you have made it? That we use as a Pesach. But safe, what about the fact that it's like bringing a sacrifice outside the temple? Abaye Amar Paslinan, Abaye says we use it as a Pesach, and Rava Amar Lo Paslinan. And Rava says no, we don't, because the person will be embarrassed to say he's lying under those circumstances. Rav Kahana Masling Rav Kahana taught it as follows. Rav Tavyumi Masni Achawars. Rav Tavyumi taught it in this following manner. B'Seifa Lo Paslinan. The last clause, even Abaye would say we don't use it as a Pesach, about that it's like bringing a sacrifice on a bama. But Bereisha, but the first clause about building a bama is like making a vow, is like building a bama. Abaye Amar Paslina, and Abaye says we use it as a vow. Rava says Lo Paslina. Rava says we wouldn't, because the person would be embarrassed to lie. Otherwise, we don't use it as a Pesach. We don't use either one as a Pesach because they'd be embarrassed to lie. Now, like Rava, not like Abaye, because this is not one of the 6 cases that are called Yal Kugam, where when Abaye argues with Rava, there was like, Mara says, V'lo Paslinan, Bahanami de Shmuel. We also don't use as a Pesach that which Shmuel taught. Amar Shmuel, Afa Pisha Mekaimo, Nikra Rasha. Shmuel said that the principle is, even though one who keeps his vow, he's called the wicked one. We don't say that to the person. If you know that, you have annulled your vow. Amar Rabbi Avram Mikra. How do we know that somebody who upholds a vow is called wicked? Because it says, if you cease to make a vow, there will not be a sin amongst you. This proves that somebody who doesn't cease is called a sinner. And when we compare the word chadal, it says here, if you cease to vow, and it says over there in Job, Sham Rishaim Chadru Roges. There, the wicked ones cease to have roges, anger. And so therefore we see that wicked is associated with chadal. I'll give you another proof that those who vow are called wicked. Because we had in our Mishnah, back in Daf Tes, it says, Kinidre Rishayim. If somebody walks in front of me, in front of the person, and he says, Hareini Nazir, Kinidre Rishayim. Kinidre Rishayim, Hareini Nazir. So we said if he uses that language, he compares himself to the vows of the wicked, then the vow takes effect, because the wicked are the ones who take vows, unlike the Kesherim. So that's the source. He says, Kinidre, because we learned Kinidre Kesherim U'amakum, Kinidre Rishayim, Nadir ben Nazir Karban Meshua. That if he compares himself to the Ksherim, it's not a vow, because the Ksherim don't make vows. But if he compares himself to the vows of the wicked with either a Nazirite, a sacrifice, or an oath, it's considered to be a valid vow, because that's the wicked ones are the ones who take vows. Amar Rabbi Shimon bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonasan, Koach Kohes. Whoever is angry, whoever is angry, then all the different types of Gehenim are ruling over him. As it says, V'haser ka'as mili, it says, V'haser ka'as mili becha. You shall remove the anger from your heart, from Ecclesiastes chapter 11. And so we see from here, V'haver ra'a mipsa recha, and remove the bad from your flesh. Ve'ein ra'a el gehenim. Ra'a means gehenim. You're removing the ra from, you're removing hell from your flesh. As it says, Kol pa'al Hashem l'ma'aneu, v'gam rasha l'yom ra'a. And not only that, but so meaning to say, what does it mean remove anger from your heart, and then you'll remove Gehenim? Anger is what leads to making Nedarim. And so therefore, if you're not angry, you won't make Nedarim, and then you won't have hell. and so the punishment is hell, and not only that, not only get hell, even worse than hell, you're going to get hemorrhoids. But you're going to get hemorrhoids, as it states, Minasan Hashem Lecha Sham Leiv Ragaz V'Chayon Einayim V'Davon Nefesh. As it says in Deuteronomy 28, God will give you there Leiv Ragaz, heart of wrath, V'Chayon Einayim, and downtrodden eyes, V'Davon Nefesh, afflicted soul. Ezu Davar Shemekalas Einayim V'Matibus Nefesh. The Talmud says, what's something that destroys the eyes and weakens the soul? Havei Omer Elu Tachtonios. This refers to hemorrhoids. Now we have a very, very strange story. Very strange. For me, I mean, the commentaries also struggle with this story to explain it cleanly, but we'll do the best we can. Israel, when was going up to the land of Israel, trained B'nei Chuzai Ba'dei. He had two men from Chuzai walking with him. Come Chad, one of them got up and slaughtered his buddy. So the two of the men were walking with Ulah, and one of them murdered the other one. So he says to Ulah, did I do a good job? Ulah says, not only that, Ulah opened up the place where he was slaughtered, revealed it. Some say just to show, look, you did a good job. Ulah was trying to save his own life. And others say, the Ran says that he did this so that the man could die quicker. And that's very strange, because are you allowed to cause somebody to die quicker? That's what the Ran says, Sheyamus Maher, so that he would die quicker. Is that allowed? It's very difficult, Ran. Kiasla coming to Rabbi Yochanan, when Ulah came from Rabbi Yochanan, so Ulah says, Rabbi Yochanan, maybe I was helping the sinners by doing this. Rabbi Yochanan says, he says, no, you were just saving yourself. You had no choice. So, Rabbi Yochanan was shocked. He says, God says, I'll give to you there an angry heart. That was in Babylon. And here, you were in the land of Israel, and the murderers happened in the land of Israel. So I wasn't expecting to have murders in Israel. In Babylon, fine, but how come they were doing it here? So Ulah responds, who shot? He says, no, at that moment, we were still in Babylon. We're on top of Chaf Beis and Beis. At that moment, we had not crossed over the Jordan. We were still in Babylon. Whoever gets angry, even the divine presence is not distinguished in front of him. What does that mean? Meaning to say, he's not thinking about God when he gets angry. As it states, Rasha Kigova Apo Bal Yidro. So, wicked one, in the height of his anger, does not seek out God. Ein Elokim Kol Mizimosav. He says, all of his thoughts are saying that there's no God in the world who's going to repay him for his actions. Rabbi Yirmiyah Midifti Amar Mishacheach Talmudo, he causes him to forget his learning, Umosif Tipshus, and he becomes more foolish, as it says, Kirkas B'chek Ksilim Yanuach, as it states that the one who gets angry is a fool. He doesn't know what he learned. Because anger is in the bosom of the fools will rest. Uksev uksil yefros ivelas. And it says in Proverbs, it says the fool will spread out in front of everybody his foolishness or his wickedness. If somebody who gets angry, it's known that his sins are greater than his merits. As it states, Uval Chema. Rav Pasha Amar Rav Ada by Rabbi Chanina. So excuse me, I read it wrong. It's known that his sins are greater than his deeds, as it says, Uval Chema Rav Pasha. He's full of anger, is full of sin. So Amar Rav Ali bar Rabbi Chanina, Ma'alechatu Yisrael, Wamitam Lahem El Chamisha Chumshei Torah. Very strange phrase. He said, if the Jewish people had not sinned, the only thing we would have gotten was the 5 books of the Torah, the Sefer Yoshua Bavad, and the book of Joshua. Because all the other books of the prophets we got as a result of our sins. I don't know if you want to study the book of Joshua, we're studying it every day, 2 p.m. now, as we're going through the Tanakh Yomi, the 929 with Rabbi Mark Gittler. And the 5 books of Torah and the book of Joshua, because Joshua is really just a discussion of the boundaries of the land of Israel. My time. But what's the reason that we have all these books of the prophets? Because they sinned, as it says, Rov Chachma, Rov Kaas. Where you have all the words of the wisdom of the prophets, that's a sign that God was very angry, that there was a lot of anger with the Jewish people, and that's why God gave his wisdom to the prophets to rebuke us. Rabbi Yasi ein niskaken le'elokei Yisrael. He says, if a person makes a vow using the name of God, then we don't annul such a vow, except in the case where chutz mikonam ishti nanisli. Or if he, except in a circumstance where a person says, I take a vow that my wife cannot benefit from me. Sheganavta as kisi, because sheganva as kisi, because she stole my wallet, for shekita as beni, because she struck my son. Then we know it, because then we want to bring shalom back, we want to bring peace to the house. We know that shelo ganva shelo hikata, and we know when we discover that she in fact didn't steal it or didn't hit him, then we know it. We will know it. But generally speaking, if a person takes a vow by the name of God, we want to know it. There was a woman who came from Rav Asi, so he says to her, how'd you take the vow? She says, okay, Israel. She used the name of God. We just said you weren't supposed to annul a vow with the name of God. So he said to her, if you had just taken a vow with mohi. Mohi was a word we had earlier in our tractate. Mohi is a synonym for a vow. We had it earlier that it was a reference. We had it earlier that Mohi is a reference to an oath. That's back on Daf Yud Amud Aleph. And the Ran said there that Mohi was a name, a synonym for Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe took an oath. By Yoel Moshe took an oath. And so Mohi is also a sign for Moshe, but it's also a sign for an oath. So he said, if you had used the word mohi, which is just a regular kinoi, mistakat kinanwa, we would have annulled your vow. But you didn't use this word mohi. Okay, Israel, you used the God's name. Now we're not going to annul your vow. Sorry, we're not going to do it. Rav Kahana iklo obey Rav Yosef. Rav Kahana came to the house of Rav Yosef. Amar way. So Rav Kahana was trying to get Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef was trying to get Rav Kahana to eat something. Amarway Litom Armidi, he's trying to get him to eat lunch in his house or something. Amarway, he said, well, so Rav Kahana is refusing to eat. He says, Lo Mari Kuo Taimatlach. He says, I'm not going to eat. So then he adds an oath. Mari Kuo Taminaway. He says, by the master of the world, by God himself, I'm not going to eat anything from you. So Rav Yosef said, guess what? He said by basically the upshot of it is that he says here that means he means he's taking an oath that you're not going to eat anything. Lo mari kua lo ta'imatay. It's a little ambiguous, but as we'll see from the Gemara. So, but he basically says that by the master of anything, you're not going to eat. So the Gemara understands this to mean that Rav Yosef was taking an oath that Rav Kahana will not eat anything from him. First, Rav Kahana takes an oath, I'm not eating from you. And now Rav Yosef says, I take an oath that you're not eating. It makes sense, according to Rav Kahana, that he took an oath by God that he's not going to eat, because he didn't want Rav Yosef to keep asking him to eat. But Rav Yosef, why did Rav Yosef say that Rav Kahana will not eat with him? Why did he take an oath? So the Gemara says, okay, we misunderstood it. This is actually what Rav Yosef said. He said, wow, you took an oath using God's name. Well, since you used God's name, now I can't annul the oath, and you really can't eat. And so that's like Rav Asi, who says that if a person takes an oath using the name of God, you can't annul the oath. So Rava says in the name of Rav Nachman, you could use simple regret. Did you are you regretful that you lost your temper and that's why you made the vow? You can use that as a way to annul a vow. In this then even if a person uses the name of God in the vow, we can annul the vow. So Rava was praising to Rav Nachman, Rav Schora. He was saying, listen, this guy Rav Schora was Adam Gadol. He said, this guy Rav Schora is a great man. Amar Lo, so Rav Nachman said, he says, when he comes to you, bring him to me. Havale Nidra the Mishra. So Rav Schora had a vow that he needed to be annulled. So also Kame to Rav Nachman. He came in front of Rav Nachman. Amalei. So Rav Nachman was trying to find the Pesach. He was trying to find the changed circumstances. Did you know when you made the vow that this would be the case? Did you know that's a Pesach? So he's trying to find circumstances. So he's making all these suggestions. So Rav Nachman says to Rav Schora, did you know that this would be the case when you made the vow? Rav Schora wasn't playing. He wasn't cooperating. He said, yeah, I knew it. And he said, Kama Zimnin. He said this several times. He said, yeah, I knew that. So he couldn't annul the vow. It could Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman was upset. He's furious. He says, Go to your house or your porch. He says, Mepharsh says, he says, go home. Basically, I don't know how to know your vow. I can't find the Pesach. Nafak Rav Schora or Pesach Pesach Nafshe. Rav Schora went out and on his own he figured out a Pesach for his vow. Pesach Pesach Nafshe. What was it? How do you know it? He said, Rabbi says in Pirkei Avos, we say it in Avos chapter 2, Mishnah 1, what's the proper path for a person to go on? Anything which is glorious to God and glorious to man. But now I have to be good for not only God, but I have to be yasher with man. But because I was so difficult, I made Rav Nachman upset. Rav Nachman, he says, I wouldn't have made the vow if I knew that as a result of making this vow, I would have gotten Rav Nachman so upset. And as a result of this, he said that's Shara Nafshe. He annulled the vow. Well, the question is, did he annul the vow himself, or did he come up with the svara to annul the vow? So it doesn't mean that the Ran says it doesn't mean that Rav Nachman himself annulled the vow, because we know the Gemara is going to tell us on 81b that a Talmid Chacham cannot even annul his own vow, and that's going down. Lo yachel dvaro. He's not allowed to be made for his own vows, but other people can. But so what happened was Rav Schora found a Pesach, and then he went back to Rav Nachman or others, and they annulled the vow. That's what the Ran says. However, the Rashba and the Meiri, they say differently. They say that some say that Talmid Chacham can annul a vow only by charata, where it's just based upon his own anger, but on the basis of a Pesach, he would be able to. Okay, Rabbi Shimon bar Rabbi, Nidra Mishra. Rabbi Shimon bar Rabbi, we'll stop the recording now. Hold on. We'll keep studying.